Good morning. Welcome. I think that we have to start the session. I work with the clock. We lost 3 minutes and we have to run. All for all, we have 60 minutes in our session. And we wanted to give the floor to each and every one of you. We have 5 speakers and we are 3 co-chairing the session. This is because this session on cultural heritage involves several policies and we are complementary. I am Maria Cayamanido. I am Deputy Head of Unit in Directorate General Research in Unit for Societies and Cultural Heritage. Cultural heritage is one of the 3 intervention areas in Cluster 2 under preparation in Horizon Europe. And we are proud of that because we worked to make the very wide domain of intervention in which we do quite a lot of things all together in the Commission services to make it visible. Because activities does exist, but in different parts of Horizon 2020 or in the previous 7th framework program, they are in boxes. We have the tangible on the one hand, we have the intangible on the other hand, we have institutions, we have the coordination of national policies, we have environmental impacts on cultural heritage, but up to now, we had not the opportunity to develop a global policy, something which will integrate processes and will integrate ways of executing, implementing this policy. And this is the first time. This is for us very much important. You are here because this is your session, because we are in a co-creation process. Before I give you the main objectives, which I'm sure you read and you know better than me in our session, I will do the presentation of the co-chairs of the session and the 5 speakers. The co-chairs are my colleague from Directorate General Education and Culture, Catherine Magnon. She is advisor to the Director of Culture. And my colleague Peter Fries, he comes from Directorate General Connecting Networks, Content and Technology. Everybody knows it with the abbreviation CONNECT or Information and Communication Technology. Sorry, Peter, to say that, but you are very famous. And we have 5 speakers. 5 speakers who will give you an overview briefly of each one of the major domains of intervention in the research and innovation area for cultural heritage. We have Mr. Pascal Lievaux. He is coordinating national policies and programs in the frame of Joint Programming Initiative Cultural Heritage, which he is chairing. He is the president of that. He is the head of Department of Research Management and Science Policy of the Ministry of Culture in France. We have Mrs. Hilda de Klerk. She is the representative of cultural institutions. She is the Director General of the Royal Institute for Cultural Heritage in Brussels, in Belgium. We have the Professor Gabor Sonkoli here. He is representing, if I can say so, because it's a very wide area, academic world, very actively involved in various dimensions of cultural heritage. He is Dean of the Faculty of Arts in the ELTE University in Hungary. We have Mrs. Benedict Selflatch. She is a chairperson of European Heritage Label Panel and president of ICOMOS. Here we have the international institutions which are very active in the domain of cultural heritage, including the area for research and innovation. And finally, but not last, we have Mr. Piero Gastaldo. Yes. He is the representative of foundations which invest big effort in research and innovation, including research and innovation in cultural heritage. He is the president of Fondazione 1563 per l'arte e la cultura della Compagnia di San Paolo. These are our 5 speakers. They will try to give you experiences, processes in their domain of intervention and the role they have as stakeholders. I'm sure that they are passionate and they have more than 3 minutes in the intervention. And I told them that I don't want to interrupt them, but this is your session, as I tell you. This is the session where you are called to co-create together with us. We have representatives from 3 main policies of the European Union: education and culture, information and communication technologies, research and innovation. We have 5 representatives from 5 different wards of major stakeholders who are very much experienced in research and innovation in different or similar items. And we wanted to know your opinion, your suggestion, to respond to your questions, if possible. How, what we have to put in a priority order for the future program, a framework program, the multi-annual Horizon Europe, which will start on 1st of January 2021 for 7 years. And under this Horizon Europe, we have 3 pillars. In the second pillar, we have all the thematic priorities, and they are organized in forms of clusters. To organize the implementation of these priorities, we need, mostly in the pillar 2, in the clusters, strategic programming process. And this strategic programming process involves not only member states, not only the Council and the European Parliament, who will approve and will create the legal basis, but also civil society, stakeholders, citizens, everybody who feels concerned, everybody who wanted to give experiences and opinions on the future priority setting. Of course, you know, not everything can be done with the best intention. And if we promise you that everything will be done immediately, you will be disappointed. We don't like over-promising, under-delivering, because we don't know what's the budget which will be given to each one of the intervention areas and the clusters. However, we are convinced in cluster 2 that we have very many important, crucial activities for the interest of the society. We will construct today, with all experiences of the past, the future. And we are convinced that we are important. We have an ongoing web consultation, which end is fixed now. We have prolonged it on 4th of October. For those of you who have not had yet the opportunity to go to give your opinion, please do it. We will take it into consideration. We want to serve the societal challenges and expectations we have at the service of the society science, or not the opposite. I am too long and I give you a very bad habit because everybody has to speak. And for this reason, I would like to invite Catherine to give us an overview of the education and culture policy.
Yes, good morning. I'm very pleased to be here. Thank you very much for associating us to this very important event. So my name is Catherine Magnan. I work in DG EAC, Education and Culture, in the European Commission. And I'm in charge of cultural heritage. The first thing I'd like to tell you is that clearly we see a momentum for heritage policies in the EU at the moment. Why? Well, you may have heard that last year was the European Year of Cultural Heritage. I had the pleasure of being the head of the task force for this European Year. I should not say it was a success, but it was, if only numerically. I mean, we were very impressed. There were 23,000 events throughout Europe. We had 37 countries participating. We calculated that we reached out to 12 million people, etc. But above all, we had many policy results. It was the only European year of the Juncker Commission. At the end of that year, we adopted a framework for action, a European framework for action for cultural heritage, with 65 actions and 15 departments of the European Commission. Of course, DG RTD, of course, DG Connect, my colleague sitting here, but many more. That was the second element which shows that heritage is important in EU policies nowadays. Heritage is also a horizontal priority of the new European Agenda for Culture, which guide our action in the field of culture at EU level. Another element is that in June of this year, the European Council, that is the heads of states and government, adopted a new strategic agenda for the EU for the years 2019-2022. And there it says, we will invest in culture and cultural heritage, which are at the heart of our European identity. It's worth noting because those documents adopted by heads of state at European level, which mention cultural heritage, are very rare, and we are very pleased with that mention. Finally, we now have the appointment of the Commissioner-designate Maria Gabriel, who will cover culture, but also research. And there, in her mission letter, in the paragraph which deals with culture, we are very pleased to see that there are 3 sectors highlighted specifically, and the first one is cultural heritage. Then come culture and creative industries, then come culture in international relations. So with this, I wanted to set for you the scene of cultural heritage in EU policy very briefly. So clearly a momentum. Then now I'm coming to the approach that we are taking in DG EAC, Education and Culture. Our approach is one of a holistic approach of cultural heritage, tangible, intangible, digital, of course, natural, but also synergies. Good cultural heritage policies are not dealt with, are not conceived in isolation. They are working in synergies with social policies, with regional development policies, with digital policies, and of course, research. So holistic synergies, we think that research really, cultural heritage drives innovation and can be, of course, can benefit from innovation. So we are delighted to see such a prominence given to cultural heritage in Cluster 2. And we are delighted to be here today to hear your comments, your suggestions on how this new investment of the EU in Horizon Europe through cultural heritage could be made the most beneficial of all. That's all I wanted to say. I wanted to stick to the 3 minutes, Marita.
Thank you very much.
Again, thank you very much for associating us to this event.
Okay. If you have any question or suggestion, we will take it after the end of the presentations, which will be brief. Thank you very much, Catherine. May I invite Peter to give us a summarized of it?
Yes. Hello, good morning, everybody. My name is Peter Fries. Actually, I'm replacing my colleague Anne Barjard from the unit Interactive Technologies, Digital for Culture and Education, because myself I work in media convergence, social media, and science art technology. So you see already in DigiConnect we are quite diverse, but also try to prolong the co-creation process for Horizon Europe. No wonder we are working digital that my colleague told me what is important is that the digitization, not in a blind sense, but in a sense that it supports culture and access and reception is very important. Often the cultural treasures are actually hidden or not accessible. There's a very famous building in Brussels, a very beautiful villa, which we cannot access for years. So there's a way, if it's digitalized, that this can be accessible. And of course, the second thing is that many cultural heritage objects, and particularly also buildings, might be threatened by decay, by natural catastrophe, or by what we unfortunately saw this year in Paris, accidents, incidents which were not foreseen and planned, which at the same time give also a possibility. But there was the thing, because there was digital plans actually for games, there was a way to have a digital map about Notre Dame, so there was already a feedback from digital to the recreation. So access and preservation and transformation from a digital perspective is very important. And Anne told me that last April there was also a declaration signed on the cooperation between the EU and 25 member states, and there are 3 major pillars. One is a pan-European initiative for 3D digitization. I think now we are in the age where I can do 3D at affordable cost with very high quality, and also we have now the network, you have this 3G and 4G for accessibility. So today we can produce digital content, but we can also access it. We don't need to be specialists or have special internet connections for having a look on that. The second point is that reuse of digitized cultural resources. Still, digitization, conservation, storage is very expensive. Can this be reused? I think also not only in terms of the digital or the data, but also maybe in terms of the experience and of the way to do so. And again, for example, I know somebody who is really taking very high precision pictures of treasures in churches. You cannot go there every day and take a picture, so you have to be very professional. You have maybe one day, and you have to make sure that after one day, what you do is perfect for being used. And I think what is always important in Europe, that cooperation is going beyond a member state, is going beyond a region, that on a natural basis we try to facilitate cross-sector, cross-border cooperation. My colleague was also mentioned, even myself was a bit less aware about it. We have a beautiful flagship initiative in Europe. It's called Europeana. And apparently we have 53 million items, including image, text, sound, video, and 3D material. And myself yesterday, I spent quite some time to have a look on that. And I found it beautiful because it's rapidly accessible, it's free, there's no ad blocker, there's no pop-up, whatever, it's just accessible. And this brings me actually forward to the point where I would like to advocate for concluding here. We see a little bit more, not only cultural heritage as such, but the circle, a permanent circle between the creation and what is resulting as heritage. So we would advocate for DG Connect to say, can we please more connect the creative and cultural sector, not in terms of what is number one, number two with the cultural heritage. And often I think it's a point of accessibility, and then you bring the people together, those who are creating and those who are actually watching and guarding the treasuries, right? So you might have a small company, just a startup on programming, and how can you connect it? And the second point I want to advocate, that's because I work in unit of social media. We all know that today the reception creation has changed a lot. And I'm not only talking only about young people, but the way we operate today has completely changed. And there's much more content out which is not created by the perfect artist, but just a person in the street which is completely neutral, taking now with the latest mobile phones, high quality pictures and posting them around. And somewhat that's a cultural heritage, and that's a way we create. So what we want with Advocate is to connect more the cultural heritage, the user-generated content, and this from the user-generated content is a passion towards also the industry where user-generated content then has a second life, and that we don't forget smart devices and social networks. And of course today we have a few relevant ones, but there will be more networks in the future. So the idea that we have a different approach to culture in both where we perceive it, but also in the way we access it. So accessibility, digitization, valorization of user-generated content is very important for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Peter. As you have seen, Peter gave you a partial but very well explained, thorough of part of the orientation paper. And at this occasion, I would like to invite you, we have an application which is called Slido. In this Slido, we ask a question. With regard to this orientation paper, which is one of the documents in the public web consultation, we have a question, and we invite you to give us your most important priorities with regard to the numerous items which are mentioned and which form the frame we propose for cultural heritage in research and innovation. Please keep in mind research and innovation, but also arts are inside, as well as cultural and creative sectors, and their participation are inside this frame. Now I go to our speakers, and may I invite Mr. Pascal Liévaux, who is the president of Joint Programming, the chair of Joint Programming Initiative Cultural Heritage, to give us his overview.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation, and sorry for my strong French accent. What I want to say is that over the last years, as you all know, the combined action of the European Commission and national entities in charge of research and cultural heritage has imposed heritage science as a proper research field, and that's very important. And the field characterized by a holistic approach, and I agree with you, associating tangible, intangible, digital and natural heritage. And it is what we try to do in the frame of the GPI Cultural Heritage. And there is now a widely accepted definition of heritage science. I invite you to look at the Wikipedia definition, which is quite recent. And it says heritage science is the interdisciplinary domain of scientific study of heritage. Heritage science draws on diverse humanities, sciences, and engineering disciplines. And I would add that it constitutes also right now an ecosystem which brings together researchers, heritage professionals, and civil society through participatory mechanisms. So heritage science touches upon many and diverse themes, among which I would like to focus on three that I consider as crucial for the coming years. The first one is heritage and society and politics. Because today, several European countries are confronted by political attempts to reverse the democratic functioning of their societies, which are driven by people who do not hesitate to manipulate the cultural heritage and the history embedded. This revisionism is founded on the rejection of the complex approaches that stem from research. It encourages personal and emotional interpretations of cultural heritage, playing on the confusion between history and memory. In this context, which unfortunately may be for a long time that of our environment, it is more than ever essential for research to maintain, develop, and disseminate amongst all citizens a scientifically founded and intellectually distanced discourse on cultural heritage. The second point is heritage and environment. And this concerns both the impact of environmental changes on heritage and heritage as a resource for sustainable development. Regarding the first point, the situation is sufficiently serious that a country such as Ireland has elaborated an adaptation plan to address the impact of climate change on built and archaeological heritage. Regarding the second point, research must contribute to make cultural heritage a readily available resource for sustainable development, adaptation of ancient buildings to new uses, development of sustainable tourism, mobilization of archaeological data for the understanding of climate change, for instance. And the third point is digital, artificial intelligence, and cultural heritage. And digital technologies span all the research problematics in heritage science. A big challenge for the near future is the management of an enormous amount of data that needs to be conserved and shared in the spirit of open science, but can also be used for economical developments by the cultural and creative industries. And Time Machine, whose leader is in the room, is, for instance, an innovative instrument. Another challenge is the development of innovative uses of scientific imagery. To study the materiality of artifacts, even at a very narrow scale, for instance, it's the aim of the ERIS project. Cultural heritage is also a unique field for the development of artificial intelligence, which will benefit to research on automatic recognition of forms, on deciphering ancient languages by deep learning, on creating mechanisms of personalized and interactive mediation. So to conclude, I would like to say that thanks to its vast and highly diverse heritage and to its important and numerous skills, Europe can take the world leadership in cultural heritage research and innovation. Not only defending and protecting its own past, but offering technological solutions for the management of a worldwide scale of cultural heritage assets in a transparent, ethical, and democratic manner. And it is not just a question of understanding our past, but of building our European shared future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lievon. May I go to Mrs. Frida de Klerk?
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for the invitation. Horizon Europe stands for investing in research and innovation to shape our future with a vision, a Europe that protects, empowers, and defends, tackling climate change and helping to achieve sustainable development goals. In fact, cultural heritage has everything in it to achieve these goals. European cultural heritage is a testimony of our shared past and the roots to our identity. As already stated, it is a non-renewable resource that enriches our collective memory. Cultural heritage not only provides people with a sense of identity and belonging, it also brings a large impact to many economic sectors such as tourism, urban planning, regional planning, cultural industries, but also the global conservation restoration sector, which I clearly defend here. Spending on conservation of cultural heritage by public and private bodies in Europe is worth many billions a year. At least 40% of worldwide tourism has a cultural dimension, and it increases yearly. European cities are particularly characterized by their historic building stock, with more than 40% of it built before 1960. About 12% of European buildings and cities are of historic value. A non-renewable resource we should take care of, protect, empower, and defend. Our cultural heritage is confronted with challenges of climate change, as just stated already, impacting the durability of our precious objects on the global sense. However, we are not prepared. We have so far not an in-depth understanding on how cultural heritage materials degrade and corrode, faster caused by climate change impacts. Moreover, cultural heritage materials are composite materials and so very difficult to predict. More collaborative and interdisciplinary research is needed. More projects with moderate budgets, not large-scale projects. More innovative research for extensive protection and preservation strategies of cultural heritage is needed, in which the conservator or restoration industry is involved right from the start and is just not a simple end user. More focus is needed on the aspects of preventive conservation, which has already proven to be as such cost-effective and yet capable to expand the surface life of objects. Preventive conservation tools should be developed in a participative way and conceived within a holistic risk assessment, rather than purely based on monitoring one single risk factor. All these projects should integrate aspects of dissemination, education, training, to foster the sharing of knowledge and transfer of scientific information, so much needed in the conservation sector. As stated previously, cultural heritage has an important impact on tourism, hence a socio-economic impact. On one side, tourism creates jobs and is beneficial for our economy, while on the other side, we literally visit our cultural heritage to death. Here, research projects should investigate new answers. Digitization of cultural heritage contributes, as already stated, to the preservation of movable and immovable assets, since their virtual reproduction can make them accessible for future generations. That's clear. As General Director of an institution that is working towards a policy of open data, I strongly defend the approach within Horizon Europe of open science and a mandatory data management plan, respecting fair principles and open research data. However, what is actually meant with the wording data and data management plan? What do we mean with that? Museums, archives, and cultural heritage research institutions lack the necessary knowledge and means to make use of digital cooperation and data exchange methods, neither internally nor externally with other institutions, researchers, and the broad public. In case Europe wants to strive for a fostering of the implementation of data management plan in a broad sense, hereby respecting the FAIR principles, there is a need for research projects capable of tackling the aspects of defining and implementing standards, improving search capabilities, improving image handling and availability of data, hence models and tools capable to cope with the four aspects of FAIR: findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. As a member of the Council of the Intergovernmental Organization ICROM, I'm very happy to see that Horizon Europe contains as novelty extended associations possibilities, from lessons learned from Horizon 2020 to strengthen international cooperation. What I'd like to see even more is that Europe should foster and stimulate a maximum of synergies and alignment between existing initiatives, research infrastructures dealing with cultural heritage and heritage science, such as already stated and mentioned, ERISH, DARIA, JPI Cultural Heritage, and so more. I'm very glad to hear that there are attempts to integrate cultural heritage within EU policies. However, I would like deeply to say to regret that the word culture is even not present in the title of new commissioners. Where is then culture and cultural heritage present? Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was long, but it was very instructive, and it was very useful. If I can underline the fact that in the cluster 2 title, culture will be there, and creativity also. And this is a work which has been gained. Professor Sancoli, please. Yes.
Thank you so much for the invitation. Of course, it's a great occasion to be there, and I don't pretend to represent all academia of Hungary and Europe. that would be a bit too big. But you won't be surprised, because what I'm going to say is very much related, which has already been said. And since we received 2 big questions, I structure my intervention about the challenges, which was the first one, and the priorities, and I try to respect the 3 minutes.
Thank you.
So first, European cultural heritage is on the making in a decisive period, which is characterized by a persuasive presence of heritage in the contemporary society. The expansion of the notion of cultural heritage and intensified interdisciplinary research activity and the salience to engage with cultural diversity and heritage discontent. First, main challenge is to prepare the new Horizon Europe, FP, on cultural heritage in order to attain an appropriate research framework, fitting both the current concept of cultural heritage and the corresponding cultural, societal, economic, ecological, and research and innovation requirements. Second, previous and ongoing world programs and calls could not sufficiently overcome the institutional and thematic fragmentation of cultural heritage. Thus, the full potential of current cultural heritage couldn't have been exploited. European research on cultural heritage and needs a holistic research agenda and an inclusive interdisciplinary approach which could help to overcome the institutional fragmentation. And the priorities are related to this. I suppose that such an agenda could contribute to overcome the traditional administrative and scientific silos of different heritage branches. The current fluid period is beneficial for the European recognition of European cultural heritage chairs, which could excel in critical approaches to cultural heritage, as well as in intersectorial and co-creative methodologies to recognize value-based European cultural heritage. Here, I will highlight 4 objectives of such chairs. First, to understand the linguistic and regional differences in the definition of cultural heritage in Europe. Contemporary European cultural heritage has a great potential to determine the elements of positive and gratifying European identity, on condition that its composite nature, its inner differences, and the related local, regional, national values are taken into consideration. Representation of European cultural heritage is essential to evaluate, reassess, and develop jointly the already existing elements of European identity, such as cultural roots, European Heritage Days, European Heritage Label, European Union Prize for Cultural Heritage. Since these initiatives need effective coordination to attract and serve Europeans. Second, to facilitate the intersectorial cooperation in the definition and evaluation of cultural heritage. The growing number of EU-related and other cultural heritage projects necessitate the development of systematic and holistic impact assessment. The indicators of this evaluation should reflect the renewed concept of cultural creativity, the coherence of co-creative intersectorial collaboration, and the strength of horizontal networks of participation in the recognition and exploitation of European cultural heritage. More attention could be given to creativity processes in peripheral or non-urban areas. Third, to promote cultural heritage communities and their cultural heritage-related rights. The recent strong EU statement about the participatory governance should be taken into practice and foster collaboration between researchers and stakeholders in this field, to pool expertise and resources to provide evidence, complementarities, and to widen audience. And last but not least, to evaluate the impacts of the digitalization of cultural heritage. The extended digitalization of cultural heritage, which is a seemingly obvious instrument of democratization, didn't necessarily lead to open access to cultural heritage. Instead, the digital divide has mixed existing and new forms of exclusion. The use of digital heritage by the different groups calls for research and a toolkit which take into consideration the social effects of virtual realities and the visibility of actorship in the processes related to cultural heritage practices, as well as the behavior of heritage communities on the porous border between public and private domains of intangible or performative cultural heritage. And just maybe last sentence, that when we talk about digitalization and technical development from the point of view of cultural heritage, it's actually about accelerating time. But we should take into consideration the society wants to slow down. That's why heritage is so popular, I suppose.
Thank you very much, and the conclusion is very interesting. Thank you, Professor Sonkali. May I invite Mrs. Benedict Salflag?
Thank you. Thank you for your nice invitation. I also was thinking about the challenges, because that was the question that you put to us. And you may recognize some challenges that were already raised by the previous speakers. My first challenge is visibility. and awareness. We are surrounded by cultural heritage in Europe, but to an extent that we are not always aware that this is a privilege and a responsibility. We need to make cultural heritage and culture more visible on the political agenda in Horizon Europe and even in the name of the Commissioner. I fully support what Hilde said before. Why? Because access and enjoyment of cultural heritage is important for the well-being of the citizens. And this is at the core of the new project of the European Commission, of the new European Commission. My second point is that actually our heritage is threatened, and it's threatened by a human action, be it climate change, tourism, conflict, forgery, non-respectful interventions, or ignorance, was also already mentioned. A new element that I want to bring in the debate is the different in time perspective. Heritage professionals work for centuries. However, the private sector and politicians have a very short time perspective. But I have good hope, thanks to the climate change debate, we are taking a longer perspective. And the last challenge, I think, is having a global vision. Whether you're very, very focused on your very specialized research, or whether policies are single sectorial, without a holistic vision, we are only handing out some band-aids, and we will not have impact on our society and societal issues. So, what are then my priorities? Actually, I will cross over cluster 2, and I will dig into some other clusters, because I think there are at least 2 domains where we need cooperation. And to be honest, when I looked at all the clusters, I had ideas for research on cultural heritage in each of them. But here I will only mention 2. The first one is health. I think we need absolutely more research on the impact of cultural heritage experience, cultural heritage knowledge, and the impact of our environment on our well-being and our health. When I was studying, this was called, for the built heritage, architectural determinism. But now, with more recent research, we see that it's more complicated than that, and that there is a huge scope for research. And the second, of course, is climate change and the impact of climate change, and especially tourism. It was already mentioned, but I think we need to have a completely new look at how cultural heritage and tourism is linked, because it will not be possible anymore to visit so many places whilst putting our planet under pressure. And finding new ways to access cultural heritage while having a local experience and combining it with having access to heritage that is farther away is a real challenge, but a quite interesting question. With regards to your cluster, I think we need to look at threats, why we need to have a better understanding of the mechanisms. We need to understand the disease to develop a cure at micro level, but also at macro level. And research on our cultural heritage, on our materials, on preventive conservation can only be done in Europe for our European heritage, because it will not be done by, and it should not only be done by other regions. I would also plead for a research on the European dimension of heritage and not so much on identities, which, by the way, is a verb in plural, but the European dimension of our heritage. And linked to that, what prevents us from learning from the lessons of the past? And how can we make sure that heritage and cultural heritage and access and experience to cultural heritage will improve the well-being of people and will improve mutual understanding and well-being. And I would like to end by supporting the proposals that we do not only need large-scale projects, but small-scale projects, that we need dissemination and sharing, and that we also need to think about language, which can be an obstacle, but which is really a richness, and which that's the way we should take it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Selka. I go to Mr. Gastaldo, Piero Gastaldo.
So luckily, most of what I wanted to say has already been said, which is the privilege of those who speak last. And so I may just recall some bits and pieces which have already emerged in the conversation, trying to connect them to the question of policy design, which I think is quite ripe at the end of a discussion. So fundamentally, I wanted to focus on one of the most boring aspects of the cultural heritage, which is the 2D aspect of it, archives, those cultural heritage aspects which were designed from the very beginning as support of information. I mean, documents, books, in a way. And therefore, the huge amount of big data that are buried under the surface of European libraries, European archives, and so on and so forth. As has already been said by Pascal at the very beginning, there is in Europe a unique series of deposits of big data from the past that need to be analyzed, identified, unleashed, and above all need to be organized and transformed into something that can be put to good use, both in the scientific and academic sphere, as well as in the spheres of public history, for instance, which is undoubtedly one of the ways in which the heritage and contemporary culture may connect. We all know that you can look at the, say, huge potential of big data from the past as a tool which can be put at the service of hard sciences, from climatology to epidemiology, but they can also be put to very good use in a dialogue with the social sciences. I, for instance, think that the divorce between economic theory and economic history has been one of the tragedies of our profession, and I think that under that respect, having the huge availability of economic data from the past that is typical, I would say, of most, say, of the European heritage, undoubtedly could help to rejuvenate some of the social sciences and some of their basic tenets. At the same time, undoubtedly, this requires, as has already been said, a horizontal, holistic approach. You need a dialogue between professionals working on the heritage and those working in the digital sphere, information and communication technologies, artificial intelligence, obviously, machine learning, visual and image technology. So all of this is something which doesn't come easy within a structure based on silos. Now, undoubtedly, there has been a lot of efforts also in the design of Horizon Europe, which has been meant to avoid the risk of departmentalization, compartmentalization, whatever you want to call it. But at the same time, it's clear that there's still a lot of work which needs to be done when you're working on themes, issues, and subjects which are typically at the border or crossing the border between disciplines, between departments, between technologies. And so the very idea that in order to have a comprehensive approach towards the heritage, you need to have different departments working together also means that in practice this is very difficult to achieve. I therefore would advocate for a certain degree of nuances, of fuzziness in the initial design of the European projects, in the sense that having too much defined at the very beginning in too strict a way, with boxes clearly and well designed, could probably be more of a hindrance than an advantage. There has to be a learning process in which probably the tools will need to be adapted to the actual needs, and the actual needs will have to emerge through a dialogue with those who are working in the field. Among these, undoubtedly, foundations have an advantage in the sense that they're used to crossing borders and that they're used to connecting the local with the global in a way which is not so typical, for instance, for the public sector. And therefore, I think that they can be loyal and decent partners for any European policy that could take place in this field. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gastaldo. We have been passionate and we gave very interesting overviews, but we have taken much of the time. If you agree, we can extend by 5 minutes. Our technicians, they agree to cover more the session. I apologize for the mismanagement of the timing, but I don't like to interrupt so passionate proposals and so visionary suggestions. This is now your round, please. You are invited. First arrived, first served. May I have the other microphone?
One here.
Oh, yes. Okay.
It's also the box. That's it. We're supposed to.
Great. Yes. Please. Suggestions, proposals. Yes, first arrived, yes, and you will be the second.
Thank you very much. It's really enjoyment and privilege to follow the discussion. I support all of the proposals. I'm Franz Maurer. I'm a professor director of the Center of Excellence in Game Culture Studies from Finland. And one area that is of crucial importance for cultural heritage is digital cultural heritage. And this kind of borderline between information and communication technologies is really burgeoning. The last 40 years has been, in Europe and elsewhere, a really creative time where technologies have been adopted for creative uses in games. In Europe, there are lots of indie games, art games particularly, that has been created that explore difficult topics, gender themes, political themes. And currently, no real archiving, no real research is yet European-wide directed into these areas. So I very much ask for this kind of European-wide collaboration in this area. And myself, I'm available if you are interested in these themes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just to say to you that we will continue with some activities which are well known in both tangible and intangible. We have a volume up to very early 2019 of 500 million euro almost in funded projects. Just to say to you that in cultural heritage, we try to do as much as possible, including digitalization. The arts domain, we started recently because it was a question of budget, as always, and we have the intention, if of course we have a support on that, to continue and to increase. We don't mean only archaeological cultural heritage. Everything which is recent, like the industrial cultural heritage, is part of that. And behavioral studies disciplines will take place also, including in cultural heritage. Everything has been described very briefly, I could say, in cluster 2. I can give you the assurance that we will take it into consideration. I don't know what will be the budget for cluster 2 and for intervention area cultural heritage in order to do the strategic planning, because not everything can be done immediately. Thank you. Please.
Hi, thank you for all your presentations. The main goals, the main issues have been presented by you. I'm the coordinator of the European network Microculture. So our aim is the valorization of digital cultural heritage. We are involved in several European projects, in several programs, Horizon 2020, but also Creative Europe, or project also with Europeana, because we are one of the partners for the museum. So we have a strong experience on all the issues of digital cultural heritage, and what I would like to stress is the fact that we need, of course, a better support to the digitization, the access of already existing digital cultural heritage, and we need to protect it, and it's very important, and we have to support all the institutions, and even and more often the small institutions, I think, in this perspective. But what is very crucial at this moment, I think, is to be able to support research action, bringing links between cultural heritage and co-construction of contemporary narratives with inhabitants in different areas, taking in account this context of immigration, of diversity, of inclusion. So we need to have more support on the inclusive, let's say, key factor that can be digital cultural heritage. So I think it's very important. And the second point is that what we need also, speaking about digital cultural heritage and technologies, etc., we need also maybe research on the ethical components, ethical impacts, and on psychology, critical thinkings, etc. So, so more cooperation with the humanities.
Thank you very much. You will be very nicely surprised to see our work program 2020, where most of your suggestions will come out in topics. Please.
Hi, I'm Eleanor Kenny from Europeana. I'd like to thank our colleague from DG Connect for his kind words. 2 points I'd like to make. One, I was very pleased to hear your point about how content is not always created by professionals, and in this new kind of like digital age, that user-generated content is important, because it's something that Europeana has tried over the years to create interactions with the public, where we encourage them to create their own, or to contribute their own cultural heritage, for it to sit alongside the institutional, and then we tell a bigger narrative story for Europe. But I was also very pleased to hear Hilde's points, where she spoke about the need to be able to support the principles of findability, of accessibility, of interoperability and usability. Because at Europeana, you're right, we do have over 50 million objects, but if the metadata and the content around those objects does not support those 4 principles, how can we then make them available to people, whether they're professionals, creatives or not, to be able to share and to reuse and create. So for us at Europeana, those 4 principles are absolutely essential.
Thank you very much. We can take one more question or suggestion or proposal. Here.
Thank you. I'd like to ask Mr. Clerc, you mentioned that you will go for small projects to promote breakthrough technology, and that's really new. I mean, it's more or less against the Horizon Europe, and I agree with you, need small breakthrough technologies. And the question is, are you going to start from scratch, or because, like, I give you an example from coatings, protective coatings, graphic, maybe nanotechnology-based nanotechnology coatings. Are you going to merge with some work done, for instance, for membranes, with graphene, polymeric membranes with graphene? So it's the same technology, and you will save time and funding in this.
Just a suggestion. What has been expressed by our speakers was proposals. It is not what will be finally decided. And we fully acknowledge the necessity, in some cases, to make a holistic strategic approach, whatever is the size of the project. In some cases, it is not justified to be 5 or 10 million a project. But in some other cases, it might be. We should try to provide a case-by-case basis, not just to put a very high budget to do artificial networks or artificial activities. But of course, we have taken note that in some cases, in some parts of cultural heritage, smaller projects might be better justified than very big in terms of budget, not in terms of activities. Great. The cooperation with other fields, we tried just to show you that it is ongoing, because our colleagues from Directorate General Education and Culture, where it is not only culture, it is also education. Education in cultural heritage is absolutely necessary, and we are working on that, and access to cultural heritage and patrimony. The Directorate General for Communication Networks and Information Technologies, we work the hand on the hand. We share even the work program under Horizon 2020 for everything which applies to transformations of society, including cultural heritage. And I'm sure that we will continue because we have something which has to be created in the domain of digitalization, but we have also the tool to be used, and both should come into our future plans. We are going to tackle, in the frame of this visible intervention area, the tangible, which for the time being is mostly undertaken under the light part of Horizon 2020. It is very much materials and technologies oriented. We would like to give a holistic approach on that, not to put in a box the tangible and in another box the intangible and the institutions, the coordination in a third place. We would like to have a very global, a strategic approach to that, because we would like to have to guarantee the best impact concerning the activity. It is a very intellectual exercise, but I'm sure that we can be successful on that. Not cut down in pieces a project and say, you will do that, and then you simultaneously is going to do that, and identity is going to be looked at on a very absolute way, and not to link it with everyday perception, reality identification. No, we have to put all these things together and to do coherent projects. This is the tendency. I don't speak about the size of the project. We have some wishes, and we will bring the message, and we have some limitations which apply to the whole framework program Horizon Europe. But be sure that we will bring the message. I can take one more question.
Yeah,
Please.
hello. I'm Rodrigo Martin from the Research Executive Agency, the unit dealing with Societal Challenge 6 projects. Before, an archaeologist, I'm also working in historical heritage management before joining the EU institutions. So there is something that I have heard about risks. I have heard about the possibilities that the new technologies give us. But I would like also to tell to my colleagues in Connect, Digiculture and RTD that there is a basic tool, which is the risk chart, which is to manage and to know we have all that, but we do not know the degree of risk all through Europe. So it might be interesting also to have all the methods we have to do scientifically based research on how to do European risk charts that can prevent, for instance, if we know how many cathedrals have cables on their roofs, that can help a little bit, for instance. So I give us an idea that I think it's important for risk management.
Thank you very much. In Societal Challenge 5, nowadays Horizon 2020, this kind of methodology, which application might vary from one domain to the other, the risk management has been developed, and we use it in some components of Societal Challenge 6. Thank you very much. We would like to be more extensive with you, but unfortunately we are out of time. I was a very bad manager of timing, but it was so passionating to hearing from our speakers and you, things that we went out. I would like to thank very much our technicians who kindly accepted to stay more in the meeting room and who did everything very nicely. I would like to thank very much my 3 colleagues who made the session today nice and agreeable. Andrea Grisorio, he is there, and he is managing the Slido. We received all your suggestions. We have received here a summary. Everything has been discussed in the meeting room. I will not keep you longer to give you the overview of that, but we will use it. Mrs. Anne Ustalou, who is here, and Mrs. Domna Paschalidou, thank you very much for your patience, for your participation, and for your enthusiasm. And I hope we will meet soon in another opportunity for a co-creation session. Hello. Bye-bye.